Hey everyone, how's it going? So what am I working on now? I have got a 2012 Subaru Outback, and the customer had it towed in about, it got towed in just yesterday. About 2 weeks ago, a customer called up, asked about a transmission replacement. Don't know what the concern was other than just asking about a transmission replacement. We said, we'd rather get the car in and look at it if you could. This way we don't want to give you any pricing over the phone. We'd rather know what's wrong with the vehicle and go from there. Whatever you spend on diagnostics, we'll put that towards the repair. Okay. So this was a couple of weeks ago, like 2-3 weeks ago, whatever it was. So just the other day, she calls up and says, I want to have the car towed in. She said, the check engine light's on. Okay, you want to tow it in because the check engine light's on? Well, I had called about the transmission, and Rob remembered speaking to her. Okay, well, does it have any issues? She was afraid to drive it. Okay, I can understand that. So I get in it today, and I scan it for codes, and the only code I'm finding is a P0456, evap control, leak detected, very small leak. Normally that's gas cap. But I think she got scared too because the traction control light is on. As you see it there. Okay. Now the brake light is flashing. I don't know if the brake is... Does this have electric brake? Yes, it does. Push on, pull off. Okay. The brake light's flashing too, which a lot of times with certain models of cars, Subaru is notorious for this, they'll flash the light like that on purpose. They'll flash the cruise light on purpose. Traction control light will come on, all from a check engine light. So it's a very minor issue with the evap small leak. Most likely it's a gas cap, considering it's got 124,000 miles on it, just about 123,500. So, but what's the concern with the transmission? I don't know. I haven't the slightest idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it for a quick ride. This should be a CVT if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to take it for a quick ride up the street. I'm going to see what it does. And when we get back, I'll see if I can't figure something out. But it's got no transmission codes, nothing. So let's go for a ride and let's see what it does. Before I actually hit the road, I did decide to clear the codes just to see. And as you see, the brake light flashing and the traction control or the cruise light flashing, that's all out. Brake light flashing. So anyway, now let's take it for a ride. Let's see what it does. Because I'm really curious. I think it's just a matter of she got scared from the lights being on, which is not uncommon. But in all honesty, I think it's a good thing that Subaru does that to scare people to bring their cars in. Because people will ignore lights. It's a known fact. I've seen it way too often. People will ignore lights and they'll wind up with a much bigger problem than originally anticipated, or than what would have originally been. So, you know what I mean? Like, it'd be a much more expensive repair. I've seen that quite often. So, all right, let's go for a ride, see what happens. It's actually the next day now. The road test was uneventful. I'm actually back in it this morning. As you can see, it's cold lights on. If you notice, I had shut all the lights off. I mentioned that in that video yesterday. Well, that video is part of this video. So I'm just running a scan on this right now, again, just to make sure nothing popped up, which so far in the engine and the training, nothing's popped up. Electronic parking brake has something, but none of these things are going to make a difference. So I spoke to the customer. I called him last night before we left, but I didn't get to speak to him. I spoke to him just now. And she said that what happens is, as she's driving, and if she has to come to a abrupt stop, like not abrupt, but more like faster than normal type stop, sometimes, not all the time, the vehicle will stall out. And she says she could feel it shudder and everything else and then stall. The dealership told her she needed a torque converter. Okay. I said, were any codes set? Did they get any codes out of the thing? Were they able to verify it? And she says she wasn't sure if they were able to verify it, but she never said that they had found any codes. So I'm having a hard time believing it's a torque converter. Not saying it can't be a torque converter. I have seen it. But in 40 plus years of doing this, I've probably only seen a torque converter do this maybe 3 times. You know, it's not a common failure. Usually, when a torque converter makes an engine stall, it's not because of the torque converter. It's because of like a lockup solenoid or something else like that, keeping lockup engaged. And what does that mean? In a torque converter, the torque converter is what gives you that slip sensation, so you can actually have it in gear, and you give it gas and your RPMs go up and the car starts moving. When a torque converter goes into lockup, it's like a manual transmission. There's actually a clutch inside the torque converter that locks, so you get rid of all that slippage. If the torque converter doesn't release, if it doesn't release that lockup, it'll stall the motor. It's like coming to a stop with a manual transmission car and forgetting to hit the clutch. You know, all of a sudden, you come to a stop and the car will go and it'll like buck to a stop. But she didn't say it did that. She just said she could feel the car shuddering a little bit. Usually it's pretty noticeable when that happens. So I'm going to try to verify that. Back in the day, in the later 70s, when lockup first started coming out, it was all mechanical. It was operated by like spring pressure and hydraulic pressure and stuff like that would create lockup. And I remember a couple of times where converters did fail creating that. I have seen on a Cummins diesel where the converter failed and it did that. And the Cummins diesel had so much torque that even at idle, that when you came to a stop, it would break the rear tires free at idle, and they would start, doing like a burnout, just sitting there. But anyway, I've only seen it like 3 times in my life. I should say that again. I've seen it 3 times with electronic transmissions. I've never seen it with a CVT. This is a CVT. With electronic transmissions, I've seen it 3 times, and I saw it a handful of times with the old school style transmissions where it was caused by the torque converter. Other times where I've seen it, it was always caused by something electrical, and you could disconnect, like some of the earlier GMs and stuff, you could actually disconnect the lockup solenoid from outside the transmission, and then that problem went away. So 9 times out of 10, we just left it disconnected. The customer didn't want to spend that kind of money. So, but anyway, excuse me. I'm going to take this for another road test. I'm going to try to duplicate what she's talking about. Okay. It's not throttle body. It's a torque converter. Very odd scenario. But yeah, it's definitely the torque converter doing this. So this makes number 4 that I've seen in my life, in my career. So I'm watching duty cycle of the solenoid. I'm watching the lockup on off. And everything's correlating to that it should be working. Not sure if you can see that. But as I drive, you'll see in blue that it starts to apply. Now I'm going to come around a corner here. As I let go of the throttle, it should come off right there. So now I'm going to go down. See, now it starts to apply again. But now as I come down here, I'm going to stop abruptly. Yep. And it's not releasing. That's definitely the converter doing that. And it goes right in gear and everything's fine. And I start to go forward. I wait till it locks up and it locks up. Okay, but it didn't lock. See, like it didn't go into like a full lockup scenario. So let me get the speed up so it goes into a full lockup scenario. And then it should stall out. So now it's in a full lockup scenario. And yeah, it's stalled. It's just as if I had a manual transmission and I didn't hit the clutch. I can feel it pushing on the vehicle. So, all right. Dealership was right. Or the other mechanic. I think she said it was a dealership. So it's just strange that it's not sending any type of a code. But whatever. All right, let me get this thing back to the shop and see what we're going to do. I'm going to research this a little bit, only because this is kind of odd. I wonder if this is a known problem for these, because I've never experienced this. Coming to a stop, normally it doesn't do it. It's as if the lockup is hanging up and causes this, like especially if you're like a slower type of a speed. I wonder if I go up on the road, if I go at a higher speed and I abruptly stop, if it'll do it. I don't know if I could film that, only because I gotta be up on the road itself. Let me go, see what happens. Okay, I did it from a higher speed and it's still stalled. So one last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go up the road. I can't film this because I just don't have the ability to. I'm gonna go up the road, higher speed. I'm gonna pop it in neutral and then come to a stop and see if it still does it. If it doesn't do it, then obviously it's the converter. If it still does it, then it's another issue. But it really feels like it's the converter. So, but I want to eliminate every possibility and figure it out from there. Okay, I can tell you in neutral it won't do it. So I tried it several times and I did it again in drive, and sure enough it did it again. I just found a road that I've never been on before. Check this out. It kind of leads to nothing. It dead ends at the other end. I just turned around coming back. And unfortunately, people know it's kind of a goes nowhere road, so at the other end there's nothing but garbage. People with motorcycles apparently are having a field day on this road. But yeah. It's called Experiment. What is it? Experiment Drive. But yeah, well, this whole thing was an experiment, really. So I did verify it. Yes, it's in the converter. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna do some research and see what I can figure out about this, because this is just an odd scenario. First one I've ever experienced with a CVT. I've never experienced any kind of an issue like this before with a CVT. So this is all new to me. But I'm not seeing anything electronic that's hanging it up. So what could it possibly be? I know with that Cummins that I had, the where it was we wound up putting a converter and a pump in it after speaking with engineering about the situation. So could this be a pump issue as well? Sure. Could it be a fluid level issue? Maybe. But it shifts perfectly fine. It does everything the way it's supposed to, and it does it perfectly fine. So, I don't know. I would think if it was a level issue, I'd have some other kind of issues going along with it. But anything's a possibility. I haven't had it on a lift yet, so I think that's going to be the next step. All right, let's get back to the shop and see what we can figure out. As you can see, it's a little dark out. You know, nights are here early. So the Subaru, this one, with the torque converter issue. Well, it turns out there was a bulletin back in 2014 for this issue, and it was updated in 2018, I think. And it discusses this issue, but not with stalling, but more of engine RPMs going way down. Sorry, we got like flickering lights here. Let me get in my van. Hang on a second. Put my stuff down. So anyway, it's the bulletin is in regards to torque converter failure. Apparently there's a bushing that fails inside the torque converter, and it blocks the oil return hole for when lockup is engaged. So it's not anything in the transmission itself, but it's in the torque converter, and it's a known issue. So the torque converter was upgraded, updated, whatever you want to call it. So the customer does want to repair it, so we are going to be doing that repair. But yeah, kind of interesting. And in the bulletin it says on abrupt stops, or not harsh stops, but like basically stops that are a little more aggressive than normal, let's put it that way. So all right, that's gonna end that one. So all right, hopefully you're getting something out of my videos. If you are, hit that like button. If you could, please subscribe. All right guys, have a great day. Keep wrenching.